Good evening to you, and it's another Thursday Eve, and you already know what's in store for you on Thursday Eves on Channel I. This is iMed, another segment of iMed as we bring you the latest health problems, the major health issues that you face nowadays. So today we're going to focus on another most prevalent non-communicable disease in the world, that is diabetes. As we have been talking about diabetes for so long because it has been that much important to you to be informed about this non-communicable disease, as well as because it has been the 14th of November, the World Diabetes Day. So to do the honors, we do have with us today Vidya Jyoti Professor Prasad Katulanda, Professor in Medicine at the University of Colombo and Consultant Endocrinologist at the National Hospital of Sri Lanka. Good evening to you, Professor.
Good evening.
Well, we just passed the World Diabetes Day on the 14th of November. We are right after a couple of weeks. And this year's theme was regarding the diabetes care, the access to the diabetes care. Why is it so important nowadays?
Actually, there's a major importance this year where I think this theme also is more relevant because we are in the middle of another pandemic, that is the COVID. Particularly, the access to care dramatically collapsed worldwide for the diabetic people. Because if you take what means encompasses diabetes care is the treatment, both insulin and non-insulin therapies, monitoring of sugar, and then education and physical exercise diet. All these encompasses or includes diabetes care. And you can understand with all these lockdowns and people being unable to go to clinics and so on, the diabetes care, the access to care really collapsed. So this is one of the main reasons why actually the worldwide this theme was selected as particularly the theme for the World Diabetes Day. And the other important thing is that the COVID, with the COVID, diabetes became more relevant. Because with time, when people looked at the number of people who became quite critically ill and sick with sort of COVID, it was mostly people who are older and who had non-communicable diseases like diabetes, heart disease or lung disease. So this made diabetes more relevant during the pandemic. So these are the reasons actually why the diabetes is quite very topical and important, particularly in this year.
So what were the objectives with regards to this theme being chosen as this year's theme? What were the strategies, the objectives, especially when it comes to this year's World Diabetes Day?
So I said the broad theme was access to diabetes care. So diabetes care, I think if we can show some pictures also, one of the most critical things, particularly across the world, is the insulin therapy, because particularly people who are needing insulin for control of diabetes, if they don't get insulin, they can simply die. They can get diabetes coma. So there are the traditional ways of giving insulin. You can see the bottle and the syringe, that is the traditional way. And then in the middle you can see the new methods of giving insulin, the insulin pens, and on the left side you can see somebody injecting with the insulin pen. So these are newer advanced methods of insulin therapy. So we need to make insulin universally available to those who need insulin, right. So this is a very, very important thing, and particularly during the pandemic, people would not have been able to, we saw that take the insulin, and then they got sick and they got admitted, and some people would have died, particularly in other parts of the world where there is so much of collapse of care. Then the other thing is the other therapies. So in addition to insulin, particularly in most of the people in Sri Lanka who have type 2 diabetes, if we go to the next slide, they are dependent on medications, that is oral tablets. So again, access to tablets for those who need tablets should be universally be available, and actually we are fortunate in this country, we have both the private health care and the government free health care, So people who cannot afford can easily walk into any government clinic or hospital and get their medications. So we need to make sure that this continues. And then other important thing that I want to highlight here is that although in Sri Lanka we have access to insulin and tablets, some people with diabetes don't make use of this availability properly because of sometimes the negligence. They don't take medications properly, and sometimes they will neglect taking treatments because of the workload and other responsibilities, ultimately regretting for what they have done. And the other reason that people don't take their diabetic therapies like insulin and tablets properly is due to lot of myths, where there are a lot of myths in the society. Some people they just some of our people are very fond of telling various things that where they are not the experts.
Yeah.
Right. So as a result of these pseudo experts, what I can say, a lot of people have fears about taking medications. So as a result, although there is availability, people don't take medicines, and as a result won't control the glucose in the blood, and then they succumb to diabetes or get complications and sick. So these are the two the sort of core the sort of strategies in controlling diabetes. And then comes the other one, that is, now diabetes is such a dynamic thing. Unlike some other diseases, diabetes keeps changes with what you eat, what you do, what exercise you do, the way you sleep, and all these things. So you need to know generally how is your blood glucose on a day to day basis, at least few times a week, particularly if you become sick. Now with this COVID, we know a lot of people have got those who got COVID, they have got their blood glucose really going haywire. Due to one thing is due to the disease, the other thing is due to other treatments that was given to control COVID, like this steroid therapy with dexamethasone and so on. So monitoring of glucose is also very important. We call this self monitoring of blood glucose, particularly with a glucometer. I know that everybody does not have glucometers, and one of the important aims of the diabetes fraternity is to make a voice to enable most, if not all, diabetic patients to have a glucometer on their own, so they can do blood glucose monitoring, which is a very important aspect in diabetes care, because otherwise you cannot get very excellent blood glucose reductions, where in diabetes we want to get this average blood glucose as measured by glycosylated hemoglobin less than 7. So these sort of targets cannot be achieved without good self monitoring. So then comes education. So education is multifaceted. One thing is education about diabetes, how it happens, how to recognize, and particularly it is important for not only diabetic people. Everybody should recognize diabetic symptoms, and I think I would like to the viewers to see this picture where the various symptoms are shown, like needing to pass a lot of urine, being thirsty, losing weight, then feeling tired, feeling hungry, and getting infections, boils, wound infections, and sexual problems, and then infections in your genital areas and so on. That is one aspect. And then the other very important thing in education is how to lead a healthy lifestyle. This includes healthy diet and exercise. So how the people should eat, how the people should do exercise, both to prevent diabetes as well as to control diabetes. So these messages has to be conveyed to people. So education, that is another thing. And then in the education, it also includes things like what are the treatments, how do they work in your body. Otherwise people, if they take blindly, they don't know what the real benefit of the medications and so on. and then how to tackle low blood glucose situation, what to do if your blood glucose really goes high and during an infection. So, all these things are included in diabetes education, where the really access should be there for education. And in Sri Lanka, actually we still need to do lot of work to improve education for diabetic people as well as for non-diabetic people on
prevent.
to prevent. And I'm happy to some extent, because over the last few years there had been programs to create a group of nurses called diabetic educator nurses and so on. So, but we need the formal educators on diabetes and so on, which is an important thing, and where that's another objective. And then I told you about the physical exercise, and actually to do physical exercise you need to have access to do physical exercise. Otherwise, if you don't have access, like particularly to safely walk or safely exercise, then it is difficult. And also you need to give some amount of knowledge for people to how to start exercise and how to end, when not to do exercise, and all these things has to be given priority. And then particularly the governments, the authorities should make enable more opportunities for people to exercise, like walking paths, and then the grounds, playgrounds, and if possible the gyms and so on. So, the other thing is, I think there is a role for like the employees, the employers, to sort of make physical exercise opportunities available to their employees. And particularly I think we should really encourage the school principals, the teachers, to make the school children physically active. And this is a very, very important thing as the school start, because our school children had been just idling at home because they were not able to go out and exercise. They were just glued to a screen. So, I would like to highlight another thing, because recently there were some reports from US where they have looked into the newly diagnosed diabetic admissions to some New York hospitals. There has been doubling of children being diagnosed new with diabetes. And in children there are two types of diabetes. One is this type 1, which is which needs insulin. It is not really related to the lifestyle. The other one, which is commonly happening in adults, is the type 2, which is related to our unhealthy lifestyle, like our eating, then lack of exercise, and as a result being obese. And the percentage of children who are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes has also doubled. So, this shows the COVID pandemic is really having a toll on our children who are at home. So, we need to really rectify this issue by, as soon as the children are allowed to go to schools, we should encourage them to be physically active. This is a very important thing. And last but not least, I think not just educating people on the importance of healthy eating is not enough. We need to have increase the access to healthy eating, have more green vegetables available. I think it will be going to be a challenge, because there are so many issues happening in the country. We know where the vegetables, green and things might become less, but we need to pressurize to make them available, and there's a need to control the cost and affordability and so on. So, these are really the objectives of this World Diabetes Day, where we wanted to make everybody, starting from the governments, the NGOs, the people, and the healthcare professionals, and multimedia, the press, everybody, that diabetes care should be made available to everybody. And this concept of the holistic diabetes care, not just making available just a few pills to a patient, but the holistic diabetes care.
That has been a very good message to all our viewers with regards to this year's World Diabetes Day. Meanwhile, Dr. Now we've been talking about diabetes for so long here in Sri Lanka, especially in media, social media and elsewhere. So what are the new trends of diabetes, especially when it comes to treatments and so on?
Actually, that is also very important, because when somebody gets diabetes, you can get frustrated. So, oh my God, I am going to have diabetes for the rest of my life, and I need to be with this for the rest of the life. But things are changing for the good, because actually a lot of research have shown that even the type 2 diabetes, which we thought is irreversible, now can be sometimes be reversed, particularly in the early stages, by very intensive lifestyle intervention. So, which this is called actually diabetes remission, where people have in people who were newly diagnosed, they were got into cutting down their calorie intake dramatically, and with that to lose a lot of weight, not because of the high sugar, but due with the diet. And then as a result, their liver, pancreas, one of the reasons for this insulin resistance is fat getting into liver, pancreas and muscle. So, when you diet, the fat in the liver, pancreas and the muscle goes away. So, as a result, the insulin resistance goes away, and with the insulin resistance going away, the whatever the insulin is available start acting well, and your blood glucose comes down, and as a result, there's a poisoning effect of the glucose for your pancreatic beta cells, that is called glucotoxicity, that also goes away. So, people get cured of diabetes. So, this is something actually that we want to promote even among our doctors to practice, and in a lot of our recent conferences and so on, we have highlighted this. This is something for people to be expected and to look forward, and if the doctors offer, to very willingly take up. And then there is a lot of new technology happening, so that even with people with type 1 diabetes, where you might have to inject insulin for the rest of the life, the artificial pancreas concept, where you can be connected to a small device which has some insulin, it gives a trickle of insulin to your body, and then there is another small gadget called the CGMS device, that is continuous glucose monitoring device, both of which are connected by Bluetooth technology. So, the blood glucose is monitored continuously, and the various programs and algorithms can calculate the way the insulin should be given. So, this artificial pancreas concept.
Sorry to interrupt you, Doctor. Are these available here in Sri Lanka?
Not
for the
yet
moment?
in Sri Lanka, but this is now commercially available in the other parts of the world. So, everything initially when they come, they are sky high in the cost, but when even you see now everybody has a mobile phone now, but when they came, only the billionaires or millionaires could afford those, but these will become cheaper with time. And then similarly, there are ways where you don't need to always prick your finger for blood glucose testing. There are small patches like thing which can be inserted to our skin and kept for about 2 weeks, and even you can have a swim. And then when it will just connect to your mobile through Bluetooth, and it will give the blood glucose value at given time continuously. And the other unique things of these new technologies, that imagine somebody their blood glucose going down during the sleep, and sometimes without their knowledge they can go into coma. But this technology through the apps, they can send a ringing tone or a message, and they can ring the mobile of one of the other third parties. They can come and alert, and this can prevent the person going into hypoglycemic coma. And similarly, the other way also, if somebody is going to hypoglycemic coma also, that can be alerted. So, the new technology actually is going to make the lives of the people less dangerous with diabetes, and more protected, safe, as well as their quality of life might improve. So, the lot of these new trends and new things are going to be very, very useful for people with diabetes.
Now, Professor, we would like to give some tips to our viewers if they have a diabetic person at home. If suddenly this person is being detected with hyperglycemia or rather hypoglycemic, like with a very low sugar count, what they should do? What are the family members supposed to do at a time like that?
Actually, family members should know when to recognize hypoglycemia. If somebody is, behaving differently, trembly, nervous, sweating unusually, that might be hypoglycemia. They should immediately check the blood glucose. If it is low, then if the patient is unconscious, immediately you need to take the patient to a hospital. You should not try to put any glucose or anything in the mouth, because they might get aspirated and go into lungs, and even that might cause death to that person. So, coma, don't do anything. Actually, there is one exception where there is a thing called glucagon pen, where the relatives might be educated to inject. In that case, you can give that. Otherwise, need to rush to hospital to give injection glucose. But if the person is still able to, not in coma, take some thing in the orally, then you can give, if there is glucose, you can dissolve some glucose and give that person, or else can give a like sugary thing like a toffee or even some sugary drink. So, by that they can prevent them from going to coma. That is if it is hypoglycemia. If it is hyperglycemia, actually hyperglycemia might not get symptoms unless it is very, very high. So, that is why we say that you need to have a self monitoring device like the glucometer. So, then the blood glucose level is very high, particularly if the patient is sick. It may be again impending coma. So, it might be worth getting medical advice. But if the patient is not sick, you can think whether there is any reason for hyperglycemia, whether you have missed your insulin and whether you have missed your tablets, or whether you have taken something unusually sugary, like you have taken 2 drinks of fizzy drinks with sugar, like then what you can do is you can immediately rectify that fault, start taking the medications, and then that might get settled within the next 1 or 2 days, right. So, those are the various things by which you can handle and face these sort of scenarios.
So that might have been very important to all our viewers. If you have a diabetic patient at home, this is what you have to know about especially. And then meanwhile, getting into the final question, doctor, before wrapping things up, final take home message to our viewers with regards to the World Diabetes Day, which happened to be on the 14th of November. What is the take home message from you?
Actually, make diabetes the sort of access available to all of you if you have diabetes, treatments, monitoring, and then with regards to diet and exercise. By adhering to these, you can lead a very healthy normal life, and that is my wish for people with diabetes.
Thank you so much, doctor. As doctor was able to give so much of information, especially with regards to diabetes care, and also what you should know as the family members if your loved ones have diabetes. Indeed. Thank you so much, Vidya Jyoti Professor Prasad Katalanda, for being with us today on IMED and giving all this information, especially with regards to the World Diabetes Day. So with that, we wrap things up for this edition of IMED. We'll meet you once again on another Thursday Eve. Take care. Stay safe.